Welcome to Honest Car Reviews. My name is Eric and this is the Land Rover Defender 130. And the 130 kind of tells you how big this car is, because it kind of stands for inches. So the 130 is almost 20 inches longer than the 110, which means that this is a huge car. 8 seats in it, and right now in the middle of the Swedish winter, tackling the snow and icy conditions. I think it's the perfect environment to test this car. With the 130, the number of engine options have been cut down a bit. So you get 2 diesel alternatives, the D250 and this D300. 300 horsepower, 650 newton meters of torque. And of course I'll talk how the diesel engine fits in this car and everything when I get into the car and drive it. The claimed fuel consumption is 0.73 liters per 10 kilometer, and that is, of course, if you think about the size of this car, almost impossible if you're not driving this really slow and far distances. The boxness of this car makes it feel even bigger. It just embraces that traditional Defender boxness with that modern touch, and it is absolutely enormous. And these visible towing hooks, both front and rear, and this rear luggage space, or this door that opens like this, huge strut, and you have to really pull this door to open it and close it. And you can see that with the third seat open, or with the third seat up, there's not a lot of space here, about 300 liters. But if you pull them down, you have almost 2,500 liters of storage space. So if you want to take this on some activities and feel like you won't be able to reach a hotel or some overnight staying, you can sleep in this car without any problems. There's a party trick, because this car has air suspension. So to get stuff in and out, you press this button and you hear some air being pumped out of the suspension, and the car is now even lower. But you can also raise the car. Neat feature to have when you need to storage some things. The big question that I have when I will review this car is, of course, why do they have the 130? What kind of needs does the 130 fill? And base price around 100,000 euros. So it's not a cheap car by any means. Of course, we'll get into the third row of the seat and the second row of the seat. So third row first, manual, solid door handles that you can even close the car with. The button is on all of the door handles, really nice to have. And these seats do move forward, but they are a bit tricky to use and you have to manhandle them. So to go forward, there is the classic little bar underneath the seats that you pull, and then you can move the seat forward. But you do have to use a lot of force, and to be fair, I'm not even sure every single person would be able to use the correct amount of force to move this forward. And it's a bit of a faffle to get here, but it does work. And then, can I move the seat even further back? I can just go to the left here. And with the middle seats here, the second row seats, in a fairly normal sitting position, I'm super surprised that me at 187 can actually even fit here, remotely comfortable. Of course, no knee space and especially no foot space, but I do fit and I have more than enough of head space. I even have my little cup holder here. And it's super impressive that you can fit 8 of me in a car. And let's try to get out of the car with some dignity. And straightforward, my body might not work. So let's go with my bottom first. Try to do it with some dignity. And it kind of works. A lot of knee space, a lot of foot space. Flat here, but then there's a bit of an uphill when you go into the front seats. And here's also a hump. A lot of headroom, obviously, and a lot of lower thigh support. Super impressed by that. Just a lot of space, a lot of air. Super comfortable and nothing to complain about. It is a big car and the advantages are obvious. And the beep is from the lights being on. Don't worry. Land Rover is trying to blend the utilitarian side of the old Defender and the luxury side of Land Rover Range Rover into this Defender. And I think they've done it pretty well, especially with mixing the colors with this lighter Defender backside, the darker materials here, lighter parts of the steering wheel and darker leather finish, and so on and so forth. Obviously a bit darker interior in this car and this spec, but the light touches and the different finishes here where you control the panoramic sunroof does help alleviate the feeling of quality. You might hear the AC, and that's the reason because it is pretty loud. Especially inside of the AC, you can hear different baffles open and close, and it's not that quiet. It feels quite cold in here, even though I have it at 22 degrees. It takes a long time for the cabin to heat up, a lot of area inside to be heating up, but it takes a long time, and I don't feel that it's efficient enough either to keep it at 22 degrees. It feels quite cold in here. There's comfort that the car starts in. There's echo, grass, gravel and snow, mud and track, sand, rock climbing, and going into water. The entrance to the 21st century with a really advanced infotainment system. And with advanced, I mean that it's very easy to use. The navigation is quick, it's exact, it's precise, easy to pair your phone, easy to go into settings to change the equalizer. The digital gauge cluster is fairly customizable. Right now it's 1 gauge, and I can change it to 2 gauge layout, map, media, and so on. You do have buttons on the steering wheel, which I really like. Left part control here the volume, the right part controls everything that's related to the cruise control. The first thing that you notice when you get into the car is how big it is, how boxy it is. You literally see where the car ends, so it should theoretically be pretty easy to park this car. But with the 360-degree camera, which is very helpful, and the rear view mirror, which is you can change from regular, which doesn't give you that much because that huge spare wheel and headrests, you do have a digital one. But because of the size of the car and the cameras and everything being used, the perspective always changes for your brain. So even though the camera says that I'm pretty close, and I think I'm pretty close, because of the size of the car, I actually have quite a long way to the car in front of me, especially when I park. That super smooth 6-cylinder diesel engine with 300 horsepower, 650 Nm of torque. The car weighs 2.5 tons, but the 8-speed setup gearbox and the torque from the engine makes the car move. There's plenty of power to make this car do what you need it to do for what it is. My lowest fuel consumption was 0.79, and that was driving really slow, really far. But it's a diesel, which means that it is less thirsty than a petrol alternative. Some complaints: the driving aids, such as the lane assist, I just noticed it pulling me to the left here, very spotty, not trustworthy at all. Right now I'm going a bit to the right, doing basically nothing. Not a system that I would like to have. When you go up to speed over 100 kilometers an hour, 110 kilometers an hour, there's a lot of air that comes into the cabin, especially from these big side view mirrors. The blind spot is very big, very big. So you have to be very careful when you change lanes, because you sit so high up where the side door panel ends. It's very high up, and then there's the B or C pillar there, and then there's the second row of seats, and then there's the third row of seats. There's another problem: the wiper blades can be very noisy sometimes. This car has the sport setting for the gearbox. Of course, it's not meant to be sporty. This car is meant to be soft and to haul people around, and there's snow on the road, but you do have a lot of torque. So we'll at least try to use it on a twisty road and see how this chassis is set up. Of course, with the snow being on the road, a lot of understeer. And the car has not studded tires. There's need to be careful, so I won't drive that sporty. But to be fair, I know when the car is understeering, the chassis and the suspension, not too stiff, not too soft. It feels very well calibrated for what the car is supposed to do. Handles the undulations very well. I hardly feel any of the vibrations that can often feel on this road. And even though the steering is not that communicative, I don't have to make that many corrections. Quite soft brakes, but easy to modulate. And quite a nice sound from that 6-cylinder diesel engine. This Defender feels more like a car going down a road than the G-Class, which says quite a lot about the suspension on this car. To conclude this Defender 130, and trying to think of the buyer that would want to buy this car, for the vast majority of people, this doesn't make any sense. It's just too big, costs more, and doesn't give me any more use, apart from, of course, having a bit more storage space than the 110. It's first year, more to insure, more road taxes, so on and so forth. But for the very selected few, there is some sort of logic in buying this 130. Being bigger, having more storage space, having more seats. There aren't that many luxury cars or luxury vehicles, SUVs, that has 8 seats or more than 5 seats. So for that selected few of people, that buyer, the Defender 130 is there for you. That's my final conclusion for the Defender 130. See you next time.